welcome again to our, I believe this is the final Success Connection workshop of the semester on resumes and cover letters. So thanks everyone for joining us today, and thank you for supporting our workshops throughout the semester. Just to let everyone know, we will be continuing these workshops in the fall semester. So stay tuned for those dates and for those workshop titles. But before we get started with the content of today's workshop, we just want to do some quick housekeeping things. So first, this will be an interactive session. So we encourage you to turn on your video and unmute yourself during discussions. But of course, that's up to you. And of course, you can feel free to ask questions at any time by either unmuting yourself, or if you want to put your questions directly into the chat box, I'll make sure that we ask them. And then finally, as I mentioned, we'll be recording this session for future use so that other instructors and students can refer to this if they'd like. So now I will turn it over to Lance Ueda. Oh, do you want me to
thank you.
this?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Sorry, one more thing before we get started. If you need additional writing support, you can always visit the WCC Writing Lab. We provide free virtual peer tutoring. We have appointments and drop-ins available. We're available via video, audio, and chat, and we're available Monday through Saturday, as well as evenings. And just to let you know, we do have a special final exam period scheduled right now that is completely appointment-based. And so that'll be from May 5th to May 13th. And then also, all UH students or UH Community College students, I should say, have access to tutor.com as well. And they provide free virtual chat-based tutoring that's available 24/7. And one of their most popular features is the essay drop-off function, where you can upload an essay and have a tutor review it and provide feedback within 1 to 2 days. So you can access both via the link on the screen below. And I'll also put that into the chat box in case you need that for later use. All right.
Yeah, fun. Very exciting. Thank you. Okay, so let's see if this works. Oh yeah, okay, here's my fat head. All right. Okay, fine. Oh yeah, and I'll also put into the chat the link to our slideshow in case you have the jet. All right. Sorry, I need to get better at using Zoom, which I do every day, but don't get better at it. All right, so we're just going to start with a quick why should I trust you as our first bullet. So you know, I wouldn't start any other workshop with this question or any other class session, but because resumes are, and just the job seeking activity is such a variable thing that changes so rapidly over time and gets more and more specific the closer and closer you get to your final goal. I would say that you should not trust me and always get a second opinion, especially as you progress in your career and you get closer and closer to the thing that you're seeking to achieve. But in case you're wondering, where am I coming from? Resumes are a little hobby of mine, not because I'm crazy, but because this was my college student job. I was a career advisor in college, and so we did lots of resume reviewing, and then I've taught business writing for, I don't know how long, like, I don't know, 15 years or something. So as part of that, I've tried to keep up to date with things. I think really good resources that are listed on this slide are a place to start if this workshop goes by and you're like, well, I don't want to watch that whole hour-long thing again, or I want something besides these slides to look at. Reddit, the subreddit called r/resume is actually really good. It is populated by all kinds of nerdy career recruiter people who are posting their resumes for review. When I was in school, I never would have imagined that students and recent grads would be so open about posting their resumes for review, but you can learn a lot by going on there. Microsoft Word has good standard templates. If you do a Google search using the file type operator, file type :docx or file type :PDF, and just search for resume templates, there's lots of good resources. And then finally, there's a resume building website called My Perfect Resume, but they're going to try to charge you $3. So, it's not a bad price, but they'll try to charge you at the end. Also, again, we can plug our Capico Center. When you get to your four-year institution, if you're not there already, I really recommend going to the Career Center. You can also go to our WCC Career Counselor, but when we get to your new institution, I would recommend going to the Career Center right away. The standard advice is go there, in your junior year, in your third year, but oftentimes people who are sophomores are going to the Career Center just to take the job quiz kinds of inventories and get started. But all right, so those are just basic words of advice. Now to get to our actual topic, we'll start with the purpose of a resume and cover letter or cover message. And just clarify that the purpose is not to get you the job, right? Or not to get the raise by coming up with a perfect magical piece of paper, right? It has a much more sort of direct and smaller goal. Does anyone want to put in the chat or scream out excitedly what you think the purpose of your cover letter and resume might be? So exciting. Right, now the purpose, there's no one to scream, ooh, yes, oh, absolutely. Yeah. You definitely want to stand out. Oh, you definitely want to be credible. Excellent. Hi, Marie. Good to see you. Yay, and Ivalani has the one I was fishing for, in addition to the other standing out and proving that you're a credible, reliable person, is to get that interview. Okay, and then part of that is getting noticed by either a human person or actually by the computer, which is super annoying, but here we are. Okay, and studies show apparently that when the recruiter or the computer is looking through the pile of resumes, they sift through it very quickly. So you want your best foot always to be forward, like the very best thing at the very beginning. And then also, I think so these next three tips in the middle of the slide are a little bit counterintuitive, but I would say that unless you're in graphic design or architecture or something, you want to stand out, right? But stand out in a way that is achieved by being very specific about the stuff that you did and what happened as a result. And not so much about being artsy, although, in certain fields, artsiness is a value. Not by artificially inflating, right? So don't lie, that's bad. And that'll get you fired later on down the road. And then not by going on too long, right? So, I think when especially as we accumulate experiences, the feeling is, oh, I need to jam this all in there. And I still remember helping a friend of mine who had been a long time veterinary technician, and his resume was 9 pages and he refused. Despite how much I told him you need to get it down to like 1 page, especially if you're like changing positions. And most of the time we need a resume because we want to strike out for something new, we want to try for a new kind of, new job field, a new position. In all those cases, you want a shorter resume, right? If you've been in the same career for 10 years and you want to go for promotion, then that's maybe why you'll see a 2-page resume or even a 3-page resume. But for most people and in most job search situations, you want a page, I think. So, all right. We're going to start out, instead of me continuing to blab and blab, I'm going to show you some examples and then we'll have a little quiz. So, and then there's actually going to be a quiz. So if you don't mind taking some notes, and there's only one question. Well, actually, there are 2 questions. The first question is just which option is better? Okay, which is the before and which is the after version of this sample resume? That's question 1. And then question 2 is I'm going to ask you at the end just to see if you want to volunteer anything that you notice the differences between. All right, so here's option 1. this could either be the before or after version. And let's just look at it a little bit, right? So it's attractive looking. And this is a for real resume. The person just removed the identifying details. Okay, so they start out with an objective to obtain a challenging position that will allow me to learn new skills. This person was a team member, a dishwasher, and a snack bar attendant. They used an iPad to take orders. They washed dishes and containers. They looked over the cash register. They have professional English tutoring experience. And then they have certificates in Excel, Teamwork Foundation, CPR, and so on. And then they have a longer list of skills. All right, here's option 1. And then here's option 2. It is black and white now. And in one column, it looks a little bit more traditionally formatted. Okay, but this is the same person. They start out with professional accomplishment, 7+ years in the restaurant business, supported the manager extensively, which led to a 15% increase in sales, Microsoft Office programs, website building, and then under this is the same experience, right? Team member, dishwasher, snack bar. Team member utilized the iPad, sending orders to the kitchen and eliminated excess customer wait time. As a dishwasher, they practiced inventory management skills, resulting in a work environment that would have previously not met guidelines for standard work zone. And as a snack bar attendant, they performed bartending for the first time, which allowed growth and development as a restaurant team member. Okay, oh, and then they have an education section now. All right, so we'll go back to option 1, just so that you can remember. Okay, and then here's option 2. And then I'm just gonna post a little poll. Which option is the revised or improved resume? Option 1, which has the 2 columns and the colors, the blue, or option 2, which is this one, column 1, that is black and white. Okay, so option 1 was this one, and then option 2 is this one. Anybody still voting? Okay. All right, so here is our answer, and that is the correct answer. Yeah. All right. So anybody wondering about that answer? Option 2 versus option 1? Ooh, Marie, I see your video now. Any questions about that? This option 2 is actually the best food service resume I've ever seen, right? It's pretty great.
I'm curious what differences made you think that the second one was the revised, if anyone has anything to share about that.
It was the second one. Here's the first one again.
It looks a lot cleaner than the first one. Like it's a lot more specific and cleaner. The funny thing is my resume that I made is like the same formatting as the first one, but if you read the second one, like it uses a lot more specific stuff. It's more straight to the point. And if I was someone who's looking at this, I know automatically like what this person's about.
Yeah. Ooh, Ivalani.
Sorry, can you scroll to the previous to option 1?
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
So I'm looking at the objective. It says, it doesn't say anything about what they can offer the potential employer. It's like, it will allow me to learn new skills. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but what can I do for you, for this company? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, no, terrific. Thank you. Yeah, and then by comparison, the summary in the beginning of the revision, right away tells you, how long they've been working, what some relevant skills are, and then this second line is, that's something that a potential employer might be interested in, right? Or that seems like an asset.
One thing I noticed with the second one specifically is that it focuses on the achievements of this person, whereas the first one really focuses on just what they did. Whereas this was, here's what I did, and here was the result of what I did. Here's how I contributed to the organization.
Yeah. The contribution is what and then it's what went beyond the generic thing that any employee would have been doing in that same role, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I do have a question too. As the question being, what was the position that this person was applying for, if you know?
Oh yeah. No, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, because Gigi asked a good question in the chat box. Because on the second resume, they removed their tutoring experience. And so that makes me think that they were applying for more of a service industry type of job, because that's what they focused on.
Yeah, that would be my guess also.
Okay.
And then if they were applying for an education field type of position, then you would make an opposite decision, right?
Right,
You'd
right.
need to, yeah, fun. Oh, terrific. Thank you. All right. So actually, so that if everyone can sort of hold Gigi's comment in mind about letting go of details that might not help you as much as other details could. I have a second set of examples actually. Okay, so we did this, very good. Again, what some of the changes might have been between version 1 and version 2. The format gets simplified a little bit. And one of the reasons you might want to consider doing that is for the computer reader, actually, that sometimes get tripped up on reading the two columns. But then also, the cleanliness, the clean look of it. They start with that highlights and skills summary as opposed to an objective. And then they refocus the experience section, like Scott was saying, on outcomes. And an interesting thing, they ensure that there's an education section, right? So in the first example, this person, because they didn't have a degree to list, had the certification sort of on the side, right? But you can recast that as education and have that in there. All right. Fun. Okay, so here is another before version. And there's a lot. So this is actually a 2-page before version. And what I'd like us to look at together are just take a note of what comes out first in the summary. So there's a summary here, and note here that it says recent Bachelor of Engineering graduate in Chemical Engineering, organizational and communication skills. Okay. Then it lists their degree, and then under work experience, it's an application engineering intern, part of the gas utilities team, assisted in design calculations. Okay, so that's how they start out their resume, and then how each section kind of begins. And then here's a second page where there's a position about being a quick service supervisor and handling cash. And then third comes this leadership experience where they have some engineering experience, more sort of engineering related experience. Okay, so this is the second page of the before. And then here's the after. All right, and then so under the summary, one thing that I think is interesting is they say chemical engineering graduate and elected valedictorian. Right, where was the valedictorian in the before? Who knows? It's very nice if you're the valedictorian to put it at the beginning, right? Okay, and then all the skills are listed out. Then under work experience, was responsible for detailed design calculations, control and markup of design drawings, resulting in 5 to 10 more stations processed per day. Right, and that sounds a lot better to me than was member of a design team, right, which was the first line of the previous one. Okay, the position, okay, I'm gonna go back for a second. This first position on the second page, quick service supervisor, that position is not present at all on the revision. Okay, so even though that was a paid position, they did not put it on, and instead they highlighted some unpaid experience that was more relevant, right? So they have this engineering orientation and upper year representative stuff that was related to the engineering field. So they left off the paid thing about being something else and put on the unpaid thing because it was more relevant. And so by doing all those things, they were able to fit it on one page. Yeah, all right. And that brings us back to Gigi's comment about having some experience that is not going toward your goal left off in favor of fitting things that are more related. Fun. Okay. Any thoughts or questions?
I have a question. I guess this is more so for folks who are early on in their career. What do you do if you don't have experience that seems very relevant to the position you're applying to?
Any experience at all?
Yeah, so I mean, I hire a lot of tutors
Oh yeah.
who don't come with any tutoring experience, but they may have worked in retail or they may have worked at different employers.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Then the task is basically to write up whatever experience you do have in a way that's focused on specific actions and the outcomes of those actions. Right? And then you're presenting whatever experience it is in the best way possible. And some of that, even though the skill might not be on the job description of your previous work, let's say they are applying for a tutoring position and their previous experiences in retail. If you think about what did you do in this role, or what did you do, even if you're doing like a community service thing, like if it's a church or some sort of extracurricular, everyone needs to communicate with the other people involved. Oftentimes we're put in some situation where we're coordinating the activities of ourselves and others. And so sometimes it's just going through a long brainstorming process, especially if you're pretty intent on getting, or in doing the best that you can and getting the position you're applying for, to kind of rack your brain, be like, what is, can I think of all the times when I had to think through, I had to communicate verbally, I had to help onboard a new employee, I had to maybe help create like a checklist or a document of some kind, anything that might be relevant teamwork wise, or if it's that tutoring position, then communication and mentoring wise, and pull that out and change your bullets around.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to if you were applying to accounting internship or something, then you'd have to go back and be like, when was I having to calculate things? Yeah.
That's good advice to find where, if you're applying for a job, to find where your previous experience kind of overlaps in terms of skills or duties and responsibilities, and kind of focusing on that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Okay, and then this is just to bring back the previous revision where they did some of these same things, right? They start with the accomplishment section. They feature unpaid relevant experience, overpaid experience. They fit it on one page, and they're focusing on the specific actions and outcomes. All right, fun times. Okay, so how do we create this highlights and skill summary? Well, so for many people, it's not intuitive, and the rules change. Okay, so I have a bad example, which is my own one. I did this a while ago when people were, I was first becoming aware of the fact that people were moving from objectives to summaries, and I just pooped something out, and then I haven't changed it because I've been in the same job for a long time. Okay, and then here is an example in the right-hand column. This is an example pulled from a real resume off of Reddit, and they say they have 9+ years of experience doing all of this fun stuff. They have experience as an operations manager, and have created their own e-business and so on and so forth. Okay. I would say, and so this version that my fat head is covering is pretty intense, but how it sort of breaks down is number one, you want to tell people how much relevant experience you have. Okay, and then one of the tips that I've become aware of recently is that people are pretty high on putting this plus sign after the year. So do that. 2, you want to include your successes or awards or good outcomes. 3, more successes and awards. And then 4, some relevant skills. Okay, and again, the reason to do that is number 1, to catch the recruiter's eye, or number 2, to help the computer have its electronic eye caught. Okay. So then after, does anyone have questions about the summary thing? Or is that fairly self-explanatory? Okay. Just as a note, where does the list of skills come from in some of our samples? Those people, since they've been doing their job search for a while, have familiarized themselves with what kinds of skills are listed on job ads. Okay, so this recommendation is going to come back again, but as you become more intense about your job search, you'll start to notice the people in the field that I want to work in tend to value these specific things, and then it's only to your advantage to put those exact words in your resume and in your cover letter. But okay, so for many or most students, the next section is the education section, right? So think back to the engineer student we just looked at. But be aware that eventually you switch it so that experience comes first, right? So it's whatever your best foot is. If education, right? So, a lot of community college students are starting out in their education for the first time, or they've come back to college to change career, right? So likely education is going to be the thing that's most related to the area, to the direction you're heading in. So put education first if it shows off your trajectory better, but put experience first if it shows off your trajectory better, just depending on what you're applying for. Okay, and then describe experience. And as we saw previously, experience doesn't have to only be paid experience, right? So let's try to remember that. Experience is relevant experience. And as long as you're labeling it truthfully, right? So you're not saying work experience and then putting your volunteer position under work experience, then relevant experience is relevant experience. Okay, so what do we do when we describe experience? Number 1, focus as much as possible on improvements and outcomes. Okay, so what did you personally improve at, or what specific outcomes were achieved? As much as possible. Try to focus on those things. Or you can think of it as focusing on actions and outcomes, right? One thing we want to avoid is there's, very, very often, or well, maybe it's not as often as it used to be, but still I think often you'll see lines in resumes that say responsible for overseeing childcare, right? And so, that's something that's describing something, that's fine, right? But what is overseeing childcare? Is that you sat back and let the children throw mud at each other, right? That could be overseeing. So if you can break it down to smaller actions, right? You made snacks, you took them on a walk, you guided them through not kicking over each other's Lego project, so specific actions as much as possible. And then what were the outcomes of those actions? First of all. Okay, second of all, start each sentence with an action verb. You can Google action verbs or resume verbs, or Scott has compiled this fun list that I just put in the chat, divided up sort of, or categorized by area. The resume writing style is pretty unusual in that way. Or everything that you write is going to be a sentence fragment. So to start with the verb and resist the urge that has been drummed into you by your English teacher, like me, that it has to be a complete sentence. It doesn't have to be a complete sentence. Okay. And then again, after you've sort of started with that action, then include details about how you did it or what the results were. All right, so for example, you swept the floor 3 times faster by using 2 brooms. Okay, fun. Then, okay, and then so that's the sort of general, advice. The more specific, nice, productive advice that I'd like to recommend to students, and then I force them to create a LinkedIn account, is to go on LinkedIn, number 1, then do the Facebook friend with your instructor, with your counselor, with everybody on campus or from your workplace as you possibly can. Because what you want to do is hook in to someone who has a bunch of friends or whatever they call it, connections. Okay, and then once you have someone who has a couple hundred connections, then that sort of breaks open the doors of LinkedIn, and you can find sample profiles in almost any field, right? So I just searched radiology technician at random and sort of go through the profiles of a bunch of people. Some people will not have much description on their LinkedIn profile, but you'll typically almost always find something where they spell out the stuff that they do, and then you can see examples of how other people that have explained their experience. And of course, you don't want to like copy and paste, especially if that's not something you yourself have done, but it just gives you a much clearer idea of how people put together resume type language, right? LinkedIn doesn't conform to like the more specific requirements of a resume, which, again, you're trying to fit it on one page and make it as impactful as possible within 7 seconds, but it gives you a much clearer idea of what's out there. Okay, if you want to get even more intense, there is a fun website called thewordtune.com where you can copy and paste in your sample sentence and then see a AI overlord, they're going to take all our jobs eventually, give you sort of alternative ways to phrase what you're trying to get at. Okay, most intense version or most intense recommendation, part 2 is again to do that thing where you're gathering job ads that I mentioned. Some of the example resume writers are bound to have been doing. So go on LinkedIn, go on Indeed for Hawaii jobs. There's HireNet Hawaii. And then, to me, once you're getting closer to the objective that you want, a good thing to do is go to the specific organization's websites, right? So you want to go company by company, department by department, organization by organization. And then on their individual website, there's bound to be something called jobs or careers or opportunities hidden away at the bottom of the page. You can do Control F or Command F and just search for careers, jobs, opportunities if you don't want to like pour over the whole thing. And then that'll let you click and see what openings they have and pull down those job ads. Okay, and then you're going to make a list of the experiences and skills and qualifications that people are looking for. And then once you have that list, then you can include them in your resume, right? Like how some of the example resumes did. And if you have 1 job or 2 or a small number of jobs you really, really want, you're like, oh, this is my dream job, I want to kill it on this one in particular, then you're going to tailor the resume each time to each one of those individual jobs, right? That seems very overly hands-on, but I mean, if this is your dream job, why not, right? So tailor your resume for company or organization A using the specific terms from organization A, and tailor the resume for organization B using the terms that they use in the job ad from organization B. Fun. Any questions about the most intense way?
Not a question, but I'll say that that is really good advice, is
Yeah,
to
I think
tailor
so.
your resume using language that the employer is using, especially pulling from job postings and job descriptions.
Yeah, and then it just right away you're broadcasting to them that you're paying attention and you're interested in their specific position. Right. What's the worst thing is that, so back in the day, people always had that objective sentence. And then some people would say, my objective is to get a position at X company. And then they forget to change. They send the same resume and it's going to Y company. That's a disaster. Don't do that. All right. So cover letters are, it's a similar idea. But they're pretty, there's a standard format. In a cover letter, you say, I'm applying to position number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that I heard about on by looking at your job announcements board, or because my uncle, if you have a relevant reference, then you should mention it, right? If your uncle is whoever, then you should say, right? If it's just random, then you don't have to say anything about it. But if there's a relevant reference, then mention the reference. And then in the second paragraph, provide specific examples to prove your skills and experience, and do it in the way that, say that you have experience in the order and of the sort they're asking for specifically. So what does that mean? One thing to think about is, so a job ad is just a list of stuff that the evaluator and the recruiter is going to try to evaluate each applicant on. And they have a little chart that looks like this. Okay, so these might be things they listed in the job ad. And then someone who's anal retentive like me is going to have an Excel sheet and list every single thing. And then these columns are individual applicants. And then they're going to rate you 0 if you're not meeting, if you don't seem to have any of that, 1 if you do seem to have some of that, or 2 if you have more than the basic. Right? And then they'll come up with a second page, even more anal, where it's color coded, and they'll say, well, so person A, who is in red, isn't going to make it. Person B might be missing some things, and then person C in blue is, we're going to interview them. And so what you want to do to make yourself the most attractive kind of candidate is you're going to go down the list of qualifications in the job ad and try as best you can to include the qualifications in your cover letter. It gets a little confusing because every job ad has a list of responsibilities and then also a list of qualifications. So a little mnemonic, these question marks are supposed to be an arrow, but my arrow broke, sadly. Okay, so the responsibilities listed in a job ad describe what you're going to do in that position after you're hired, right? So I did a LinkedIn search for radio hosts, and lo and behold, there are a bunch of people who post their radio host experience in their profile, and there are also job ads on LinkedIn for radio hosts. So here is a list of things you might have to do as a radio host, right? And the mnemonic is resume goes with responsibilities. So R and R. If you have experience organizing and planning the show calendar, then you might want to say somewhere in your resume that you planned the show calendar leading to 5% increased attendance, right? Then they're like, oh, look, she did it already. Okay, the cover letter is where you can catch any of the things that, let's say you're not doing the super intense version where you're modifying your resume really meticulously for each job, or something like being energetic isn't something that you put in a resume, right? You don't necessarily say, I was so energetic at doing the calendar. That might just sound weird. In a cover letter, cover letter is where you're going to try to catch all and especially cover these qualifications. This this chart is not based on the responsibilities. Okay, so this chart and this chart, these are based on the qualifications. It's not fair for the recruiter and the hiring person to judge you on stuff that you would be doing after you're hired, right? They're judging you on how well qualified you are before you're hired. So just keep that in mind. So cover letter, the mnemonic is cover letter goes with qualifications. And they list them all out. And in your cover letter, you can remind them in the same order, right? So going back to the little chart, the Excel sheet, this sheet is put together just in the order that they're listed on the job ad. And so keeping that in mind, you know that someone out there is going to have some anal retentive chart. You can say in your cover letter, I got my bachelor's in film from UH Manoa. I was a host on KTUH. My video samples are on my online portfolio at vimeo.com/my name is whatever. And I'm very organized in doing this and that, and right, and go down the list and try to make sure that you're hitting these points in this order on your cover letter, and that makes it much easier for the person rating you to fill in their little chart in a expeditious way, and then they feel, because especially if the stack of applications is really high, they will appreciate how organized you are and that you help them fill in their chart easily, and they'll be more enthusiastic, I think, about having you in for an interview. All right. Okay, so does anyone want me to go back to any slide in particular, or we have some time for open questions and answers?
I have a random question about listing your education.
Oh yeah, fun.
Do you ever list your GPA, or if you've graduated with honors or distinction or anything like that, or should you just leave it blank?
Oh, sure. Okay. So the rule of thumb that I have in my head is old, but the rule of thumb used to be like, if it's over 3.0, you can put your GPA, right? And then, well, definitely distinctions, right? So if you graduate with honors, sure. And then the guideline used to be 3.0 or higher. And then some people list their overall cumulative GPA, and then alongside that, they have their major area GPA. And then something that I used to advise is, if your GPA is if you're happy with it, if it makes you happy, then put the GPA. Right. But then as you sort of go, typically I think GPA might tend to come off.
Yeah.
But I think it's you can use your own judgment, but the rule used to be 3.0 or higher.
Okay.
Hi, Lance. I have a question real quick about digital badges and credentials and those kind of things.
Oh, fun.
And I was just wondering if it's like better, since maybe you want to keep things to one page, to do the link out, or is that humbug for the person who receive, having to link out to things to look at more detailed things like a badge with all kind of information?
Oh, that's fun. Well, so if it's an unrelated badge, then maybe having the links would be fine. But if it's worth describing in more detail, because that's your main source of things to talk about, then I think it could be worth talking about individual badges. If it's worth pulling out details from what the curriculum was or what the project was, then I think that's definitely worth it.
So maybe put that like in text a little bit. I mean,
yeah,
not maybe still have a link, but just have it easier to just get that info. Okay.
Yeah. Especially since, like if it's the case where, that's the most recent thing you did, and you did it for the specific reason of improving your how well qualified you are for a specific thing, then, if you spend the time, and, I think especially if it involved like a if you pay for the upgraded certification rather than just auditing, then it might be worth writing up. Yeah. Oh, fun. Okay. So Toby, did you get the oh, here, I'll just put in let's see.
Yeah, Gigi, I do think that's a good question though, because I think digital certifications and badges and digital credentials overall are becoming more of a prominent thing, especially since we've kind of transitioned to COVID. So yeah, I actually haven't seen yet a resume that has digital badges on it. So I kind of wonder the same thing, like, do we include the badges, or do we link someone to the badge? But yeah, it's a good question. Definitely something to consider.
Yeah, Badger is really great. And some people here might have, gotten something with Badger. It's just got so much rich stuff, but you definitely, like you were saying, Lance, maybe if it's relevant, just put a little snippet of that. And then if they want more, because usually there's a lot more in the badge itself. I had a question real quick. I'm sorry, just about the term like soft skill, hard skill, or like professional skill, academic. I don't know, it seems like it's kind of all over the place. Any thoughts on how you should kind of label the skills, or just put relevant, or I don't know. Just wondering about that. Thank you.
I think they can be included on their own line, just under skills. And I'm not sure that I'd necessarily need to see them labeled under their own label. Yeah, so I think I think we see less, people aren't labeling, computer skills apart from other skills as much anymore. And so I think maybe the distinct labeling of this skill versus that skill versus this other skill might be on the way out. And then as long as the skills are grouped in kind of coherent groups, then the reader can figure it out.
Just kind of keeping it simple then. No need to put labels, just skills if it's relevant.
Yeah, I think just skills is okay.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, fun. Oh, that's a fun question. Neat. Other questions? Does everyone have, Marie, you have a resume and you're thinking of revising, or are you starting from scratch?
I have a resume, but I think I gotta revise it now. Either add and clean it up and stuff like that. I also have to write a cover letter. Never written one before.
Fun. Oh, neat. Yeah.
If you need assistance with your cover letter, we can definitely help out at the writing lab. If you haven't used the writing lab before, all of our tutors can assist there, but you can also check out tutor.com or one of us. So let us know if you need any help.
Okay. Well, let's see. All right. So on that note, here's the link to the writing lab. And then you can also go straight to tutor.com.
Yeah, so if you're a Windward student, that link will take you directly to those two resources. Also, if you're not a Windward student, you're still welcome to use our resources. But there may be resources on your specific campus that might be more relevant to you. So definitely check out the writing labs on the various campuses as well. But yeah, I think, are we ready to wrap up for today?
Yeah, we have this eval QR if you'd like.
Yeah, so before leaving us today, we'd really appreciate your feedback on our workshops. We're collecting feedback for all the workshops and looking at modifying workshops next semester based on your feedback, including additional workshops based on your suggestions. So please complete that feedback before you leave us today. And then I'll also put the link in the chat box in case you need that. There you go. But otherwise, I think we just want to say mahalo and thank you for coming today. Thank you for attending today's Success Connection workshop. And if you've attended any of our other Success Connection workshops, we also really appreciate it. Like I said, we're going to be continuing these workshops in the fall semester, so be on the lookout for announcements regarding dates and topics. But we are planning on continuing these workshops ideally on Fridays. This seems to be a time that works for a lot of students. So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.